Welcome to the D.E.A.D podcast, where I discuss all things spooky and weird. I'm Desi, and today I'll be talking about Mexican Folklore Part 3, La Lechuza. Let's get started. Hey everyone, long time no talk. I know this is a big gap from my last episode, but I'm wrapping up the Mexican Folklore series with the final episode, Part 3, about La Lechuza. Oh, I am drinking tonight. I think this is the Cupcake brand sweet red wine. It's pretty good. A little sweet, but it'll do. I'm not wearing a spooky shirt tonight, but I will next time. I promise. What is a lechuza? So, a lechuza is Spanish for barn owl, and it is in Mexican and Tejano folk tales. Just like La Llorona and El Cucuy that we've already covered, La Lechuza is a monster from Mexican and Tejano folklore used by parents, again, we've talked about this numerous times, to scare children to behave. These stories were passed over generations as a tale of a woman that sold her soul for magical powers that she uses to shapeshift into a large owl, taking revenge on whoever has wronged her. She can mimic the cries of a baby to lure her victims outside in order to swoop down for her next meal. This version says she preys on babies. She is described as being somewhere between 4 and 7 feet tall with a 15-foot wingspan. I don't know, but this reminds me of Maleficent with Angelina Jolie. That's what that kind of reminds me of, but scarier. And her body looks like that of a giant owl, but her face is that of an old woman. There have been stories told about her dating all the way back to the 1820s when the Spanish colonized Mexico, but her exact origin is unknown. There have been reported sightings of her for centuries. Back in January of 1976, a man from Brownsville, Texas, heard a noise outside his trailer house. When he went to check, there was a 4 foot tall bird with a long beak and eyes as big as silver dollars. Her face was more like a bat than a bird. Okay, so I'm going to talk about like different versions of her, different legends. So they're all going to be a little different, but some of them might be similar. And I'll have all the links to the articles and my sources in the show notes. Okay, so this is a short version of the story of La Lechuza. She is supposedly a witch who can turn herself into a giant white owl. She is the ghost of a mother who lost her children to a drunk driver. She haunts bars and preys on the drunks coming out of them in hopes of avenging her children's deaths. This version states that Lalachusa is a witch who has the ability to transform into an animal, usually a big bird like an owl or a crow. Supposedly, she is able to change into whatever she wants. Sometimes the transformation can be done with or without her consent, but she doesn't mind because she gets paid for her services. A witch's power is an important part of Mexican folklore because there are so many superstitions behind them, and they are seen as very powerful beings that must be respected. Also, that birds of prey are associated with evil, so they are often associated with witches. She is thought to control the souls of men and bring them to their death. However, her true intentions are unclear because she will make deals with good and evil people. She's not necessarily malevolent. She just does what she needs to survive. When an owl or a witch or both turn into a lechuza, she will keep her identity and powers. It is said that she does not allow herself to turn into an animal unless it is for money, because she would lose her powers otherwise. Also, if the head of the lechuza changes, so does her power and strength. Even worse, supposedly, there isn't just one lechuza, but rather a whole flock of women who have the ability to shapeshift into owls, so there is a chance that they could hunt in packs. The origin of the term is unclear, but one theory is that it is Spanish and it refers to the witch's dress, which is made out of owl feathers, lechuzar. Lechuza is also a word that is interchangeable with the Spanish word bruja, which means witch, but it is commonly translated to owl in Spanish, which that I did not know. A lot of Mexican folktales have a pretty set in stone origin, but the story behind the Lechuza does not. This is one legend floating around Mexico that does not really have a solid backstory. No one really knows how the legend even got started or why the Lechuza even exists. Some believe Lechuzas are women who were murdered by their lovers and are seeking revenge. Others think the origin is just an extreme level of magic. A more popular origin story of Lechuza states Lechuzas are women who practice witchcraft but were exposed by villagers. After they were killed by the villagers, they swore to seek the revenge and anyone else who got in their way. Legend also states that they feast on people. Some even suggest that witches will lure people out of their homes with noises such as a baby's cry. Lechuzas have very large talons that are capable of taking a full grown man off the ground while in flight. Sightings have also suggested they can pick up a car if they are hungry enough to do so. A lechuza's hunger knows no bounds, and she will do anything to hunt down victims for her next feast. In recent reports of Lechuza sightings, these witches have the ability to drain car batteries in order to leave the person helpless on the road, as well as the ability to control thunder and lightning. These witches may have special connection to electricity. One of the stranger aspects um, of the Lechuza legend is her strange tie-in with storms. Mystics believe that these owl witches are capable of causing thunderstorms out of the blue. According to the Hano Tales, if you notice strange thunderstorm patterns in your area, a lechuza might be linked to it. No one knows why stormy weather is so deeply tied to these witches or why it's linked to birds. Although La Lechuza is known for having the head of a woman and the body of a large owl, there have been sightings that she just shows up in the form of an owl the size of a human being. There is an old omen that says you can tell if a lechuza is close by if you can hear bird songs at night, considering how unusual it is for birds to sing at nighttime. Okay, so this next version is says in folklore from Mexico and parts of South and West Texas, she is a witch that can turn into a huge owl. In the daylight, La Lechuza walks among us as a normal woman, but at night she can shapeshift into a terrifyingly giant owl that flies, attacks those she dislikes and wants to eat, and warns of tragedy. As the legend goes, those who are blessed with her presence in creature form will see her as a huge black owl glaring at them from above with a predator gaze. One unique feature that also separates her from ordinary birds is that she has the head of an old woman that is twisted and decaying. Also, there are many of them, like a coven of witches. There are flocks of lechuzas, which makes this legend even more terrifying because it states in the legend that they can hunt in packs. One of the more common origin stories state that lechuzas sold their souls to the devil for magical powers. Another common tale is that these women were accused long ago of practicing witchcraft by people in their village and were later killed for it. And at their death, they swore to get revenge on those who harmed them, including anyone who dared get in their way. Some even believe that these are women that may have been murdered. As if their appearance isn't terrifying enough, but legend tells us that these witches eat humans. It is how they survive. It is said that lechuzas can lure you out of your home with the right noises. A lechuza's talons are so large that they can take a full grown man off the ground. Some have even reported a lechuza capable of picking up a car and trying to carry it away. It is said that if they are hungry enough, then there is no limit to what they might do to feed. This reminds me of, I don't know what you call him, but the creature dude from Jeepers Creepers. where he has the wings and he can pick them up and everything. That's what it reminds me of. He does have the big wings. He can fly. He takes souls, eats people, certain parts. Okay, so if you see a Lechuza and she does not attack you, then she is there as a sign that something bad is going to happen to someone close or any loved one. But those who have encounters with this witch never really get to live long after seeing her. There are telltale signs that a Lechuza is near, so staying alert may be a good idea as well as hiding. For when the signs are clear that she is near you or a loved one may be in danger. Her cry is the most common sign, but beware that there are signs to look for when the witch is around. Most sightings have indicated that seeing the shadow of an unusually large bird means you may be in the presence of Lechuza. Reports have said that she appears as a huge owl the size of a human. La Lechuza does not screech like a hawk or eagle. She does not even hoot like an owl. No, this owl witch will conjure up a variety of whistles in many different combinations just to get your attention. The most distinctive and common combination can be heard in sets of three. After all that we have just learned about this witch, it seems there is more. As you may know, these witches can be very crafty, and since they look like one of us, during the day they know that humans cannot resist the urge to save a helpless child. To single out humans and lure them to a place there where it would be easier to catch them, Lala Chusa will hide and mimic the sounds of a baby or any innocent creature. Sometimes they will hide in the treetops and mimic the sounds of a kitty. Other times it will bark like a small puppy. Now that would get me. I would definitely go out to save the puppy. I would suggest that you take caution when you are out in the wilderness and hear such sounds. If you cannot resist the urge to check it out and help, at least be careful and alert. Okay, so here is another version. It says, as if kids didn't have enough fear with the boogeyman and monsters hiding under their beds, children in northern Mexico and parts of Texas also hear tales of a creepy witch owl woman called La Lechuza. Since the mid 1700s, frightening stories about La Lechuza have scared the wits out of those who hear her story. And to up the creepy factor, the woman is a bruja, which is a witch with revenge on her mind. You see, she was a curandera, a healer, practicing white magic, but people in her village were frightened of her powers and killed her. Resurrected, possibly by selling her soul to the devil, Lala Chusa returned with revenge as her main objective. Now she shifts into a huge owl, lures passerbyers to her hiding spot with innocent sounds, and consumes the curious as her next meal. Her favorite victims, it is claimed, are intoxicated men. And while hiding and luring people with baby cries is her favorite MO, that isn't the only way Lechuza makes herself known to victims. Under the cover of darkness, she has also been known to swoop down on her prey from above and scoop them up, carrying them off to her lair where they are never heard from again. You see, that sounds like Jeepers Creepers. Definitely, maybe they should hook it up, right? They'll make a cute couple. Next ones, we're going to be talking about the supposed sightings of La Lechuza. So there have been numerous La Lechuza sightings over the centuries. Some more recent ones keep the myth alive. So this one is from 2017 in Chicago. Clyde Lewis at Ground Zero writes about an April 16th, 2017 sighting of a humanoid owl creature one night at Humboldt Park in Chicago. Clyde tells of several witnesses seeing a 2 foot tall human like owl. Other witnesses swore the humanoid bird was over 6 feet tall, with black was over 6 feet tall and black with huge red eyes. So this next sighting, Mike Cox writes about three women on their way home from San Antonio one night encountering a lechuza, which is about 2 hours away from me actually. According to the women, they saw a very large bird come up from behind them and fly past their car. The bird turned and came back towards the women. At one point, the bird kept pace outside the driver's window as the woman driver tried to outrun the bird. Suddenly, the car engine stopped and wouldn't restart. The three women sat terrified in the dark. Then the bird disappeared and the driver was able to restart the car. Another popular story is of several men tracking down and shooting what they believed was a lechuza. They searched and were unable to find the bird and gave up. The next morning, they set back out to find the bird when they came upon the body of an old woman with frightening features. Her limp body was draped over a tree limb. The men believed they'd killed a real lechuza. Okay, so now next, I'm going to be telling you how to protect yourself just in case you come into contact with a lechuza. Okay, so get your notepads out so you can know how to protect yourself. When facing lechuza, there are a few ways to ward them off. First one, line your home with salt. Salt is seen as something that can ward off evil. Apparently, lechuzas can't stand salt. Placing some nearby will prevent them from lurking near your home. Which wasn't this the salt that was in La Llorona, wasn't it? Okay, this next one is kind of silly. It says, curse at it. Now, generally, monsters wouldn't care a foul language, but supposedly cursing will make her go away. Maybe she just doesn't like bad language. I don't know. Or it's scary to her. Okay, the next one. This one says, don't bother with traditional usual weapons, of course. The magic that Lechuzas carry make them impenetrable. So using traditional weapons such as guns or knives won't help. Another one, which is kind of obvious, is if you hear her calls, stay inside and avoid eye contact. It is believed that direct eye contact with a Lechuza gives them the ability to steal your soul or be able to shapeshift into you. This one is kind of like the salt one, but this one says to throw a mixture of salt and chili powder in her face. But like, I wouldn't want to be close enough to be able to throw salt and chili powder in her face. So I don't know about that one, but if you're close enough to her, this next one is interesting. It says tie 7 knots in a rope, 7, and hang it by your door as a sign of respect, and La Lechuza will leave you alone. The last one is recite a prayer, such as the Canticle of Mary, and the creature will be frightened away. I'm not sure what that prayer is, but I'll have to look that up. Now, so we can get real spooky, I'm going to wrap this up by telling y'all some personal stories. Now, not my personal stories, but I have some personal stories from my grandma, and I have one from my mom. So, this first story, okay, so the story that my grandma told me came from her mom. And so apparently there was a Lechuza outside of my great grandma's house at night, and it kept whistling and making all this noise. And so finally, my great grandma went outside and yelled at it and cussed at her to go away. I don't know why she told her, but she told her to come back in the morning with salt. And so the next morning, one of her old neighbors showed up the next morning with a little cup of salt. And my great grandma got scared and didn't trust that lady ever again. My grandma said that the owls are messengers. This next story, my grandma told me, is that the owls can also be messengers, which we talked about. So my grandma saw a white owl when she was little. It stayed at her house for 3 days. And then a couple of days later, my great grandpa, which was her dad, ended up passing away. So she does believe that they are omens for if it doesn't come for you, they're omens to tell you that something's going to happen to a loved one. So she does believe that because that happened to her with her dad. Okay, so this next story is one that my mom told me. So one night my mom was playing with like a baseball with my uncle, and they were throwing it. Okay, so like you know how you can stand like in your backyard, right? You can throw it over your house. It wasn't a very big house, but you can throw it over your house to the front yard, right? So they were doing that. They were throwing it from the backyard to the front yard over the roof. And my uncle would run to the front of the house, yell that he got the ball, and then throw it back to my mom in the backyard. Well, one of the times they threw it and it came back fast before my uncle could even go to the front of the house. They ran to tell my grandma about it, and right when they were telling her about it, they immediately heard like some kind of whistle, and my grandma told them immediately to get inside and that it was a lechuza. They could see the shadow of it there. Also, one time when my grandma and my mom were by themselves at night when my mom was younger, and there were times that they would like be laying in bed and they could hear the whistles and the hooing outside, and that it was a lechuza. And my mom said that it was so creepy because they would just hear it, and of course they wouldn't go outside to check. But yeah, so that was like so creepy. So that is the end of the episode. So I don't know what I think. I mean, my mom and my grandma had those experiences. And of course, I believe, what my grandma tells me. So I don't know, but I guess it could be possible. And the stories that my mom and my uncle and my grandma experienced. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't think I want to see her, but I guess it could be true. My favorite stories were probably the ones that my grandma and my mom told me, just because they were so like close to home, and it's just fun to hear those type of like stories from back then. It was just fun to hear and reminisce and like learn about the past. So yeah, so those are the stories. I don't know what I think. I mean, my mom and my grandma had those experiences. And of course, I believe, what my grandma tells me. So I don't know, but I guess it could be possible. And the stories that my mom and my uncle and my grandma experienced. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't think I want to see her, but I guess it could be true. My favorite stories were probably the ones that my grandma and my mom told me, just because they were so like close to home, and it's just fun to hear those type of like stories from back then. It was just fun to hear and reminisce and like learn about the past. So that was fun. But I want to know, what do y'all believe? Have you ever heard of La Lechuza? Do you believe in La Lechuza? Let me know. Just send me a DM on Instagram at the Dead Podcast, or you can email me at the Dead Podcast one@gmail.com. So that brings me to the end of this episode. Thanks for listening to the Dead Podcast. Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at the Dead Podcast. Also, feel free to send in your stories, episode suggestions, or feedback at thedeadpodcast1@gmail.com, or you can send me a DM on Instagram also at the Dead Podcast. If you enjoyed this show, please rate and review us on whatever platform you are listening to, and be sure to come back next week for our next episode.